What if the man everyone mocked, the single father scrubbing floors just to feed his little girl, was secretly the most powerful man in the city? What if the world saw a janitor, but beneath the worn-out uniform was a king waiting for the one reason he needed to reclaim his throne? Finian Croft pushed his mop across the gleaming marble floor of Sterling Corporation's lobby, the squeak of rubber on polish the only sound in the cavernous, silent space. His reflection was a tired, stooped ghost staring back from the polished surface, a man worn down by grief and exhaustion. During the day, the lobby buzzed with the energy of ambitious men and women in tailored suits, their voices sharp and their strides confident. At night, it was Finn's domain, a silent cathedral of wealth he was paid to keep pristine. He was invisible, a fixture as unremarkable as the potted ferns. That was how he liked it. Invisibility was safety. But it came with a price. Earlier that evening, Damien Sterling, the CEO's arrogant nephew and a vice president whose only qualification was his last name, had walked through the lobby with a group of clients. He paused, a cruel smirk twisting his lips, and gestured with his champagne flute toward Finn. "And this," he'd announced loudly, "is our head of nocturnal sanitation. A vital cog in the machine. Isn't that right, Finny?" The clients had chuckled politely, their eyes flicking over Finn with a mixture of pity and disdain. Finn had simply nodded, his jaw tight, his gaze fixed on a stubborn scuff mark. He was used to it. He was the janitor, the single dad who smelled faintly of bleach and desperation. They saw his patched-up coat, the second-hand shoes, the weary lines around his eyes, and they drew their conclusions. They couldn't see the men who spent every cent he earned on fresh fruit for his daughter, Rosie, or the men who read her stories every night until his voice was hoarse, creating different voices for every character. They couldn't see the men who still mourned the wife he had lost, the woman whose laughter had been the sun in his sky. He finished the lobby and moved toward the executive suites on the 44th floor. It was there he saw her. Clara Reed, a junior analyst who worked impossibly long hours, was slumped over her desk, her head in her hands. She was one of the few who ever looked him in the eye, offering a tired but genuine smile. Finn hesitated, then quietly approached. "Long night?" he asked, his voice soft. She jumped, startled. "Oh, Finn. I'm sorry, I didn't hear you." She ran a hand through her hair, looking exhausted. "It's this quarterly report. Damien wants it reworked, and the deadline is tomorrow morning." "It feels impossible." Finn glanced at the complex spreadsheets on her screen, the columns of numbers blurring together. He saw the logic flaw instantly, a simple miscalculation in the growth projection formula that was throwing off the entire dataset. It was a mistake anyone could make under pressure. He pointed a worn finger at the screen. "Your baseline is off," he said quietly. "You're compounding the Q2 variable instead of averaging it against the annual projection. Try fixing that cell. The rest should fall into place." Clara stared at him, her brow furrowed in confusion. How could the janitor possibly understand predictive financial analytics? She was about to dismiss it, but something in his calm, certain tone made her pause. She clicked on the cell, made the adjustment he suggested, and hit enter. The entire spreadsheet instantly recalibrated. Red error warnings vanished, replaced by neat columns of green, positive figures. The report was fixed. She looked up at him, her mouth agape. "How? How did you know that?" Finn just offered a small, sad smile. "My wife was good with numbers," he lied easily. "She taught me a few things." He didn't wait for more questions. He simply picked up his bucket and moved on, leaving Clara staring after him, a seed of profound curiosity planted in her mind. Who was Finian Croft? He was more than just a janitor. She was sure of it now. The next day, armed with her perfect report, Clara felt a surge of confidence. But Damien Sterling crushed it within seconds. He barely glanced at her work before tossing it back on her desk. "Mediocre, Reed. As usual." "I expected more." He leaned in, his voice a low sneer. "Maybe if you spent less time fraternizing with the help, you'd have more brainpower for the job you're actually paid to do." His words were a slap, meant to humiliate her and remind her of her place. But they had the opposite effect. Her curiosity about Finn hardened into a protective instinct. She watched Damien strut away, a petty tyrant in a $1,000 suit, and felt a quiet, simmering anger. Later that week, Clara was leaving the office late when she saw Finn in the park across the street, pushing his daughter on the swings. The little girl, Rosie, was a bundle of pure joy, her laughter like tiny bells in the evening air. Finn's face, usually etched with weariness, was transformed. He was smiling, a genuine, soul-deep smile that lit up his features. Clara watched from a distance, feeling like an intruder on a sacred moment. She saw the way he carefully wrapped his own scarf around Rosie's neck when the wind picked up, the way he crouched down to look her in the eyes when she spoke. This was no defeated man. This was a king tending to his entire kingdom, a kingdom that fit perfectly in the circle of his arms. It was in that moment that her initial pity for him completely evaporated, replaced by a profound and unsettling respect. She started making a point of staying late, not just for work, but to talk to him. They spoke of small things, the weather, the city, Rosie's love for drawing unicorns. Finn was guarded, but with each conversation, a little more of the wall around him crumbled. He told her about Rosie's mother, how she had died in a car accident 2 years ago, leaving a hole in their lives that could never be filled. He spoke of his struggles, the constant worry about bills, the fear of not being enough for his daughter. Clara, in turn, found herself opening up about her own past, a bitter divorce that had shattered her confidence and left her wary of trusting anyone. In the sterile silence of the empty office tower, under the unflattering glow of fluorescent lights, they found an unlikely connection, two lonely souls sharing their burdens. One evening, as Finn was polishing the brass nameplate on Damien's office door, the man himself stormed out, his face puce with rage. He was on the phone, screaming at someone about a deal that had fallen through. Incompetent fools. I'll have all of your jobs, he bellowed. He ended the call and hurled his expensive smartphone against the wall, where it shattered into a dozen pieces. He then rounded on Finn, his eyes landing on him as if searching for a target for his fury. What are you looking at, grease monkey, he snarled. Get back to work before I have you fired for loitering. Clara stepped out of her office, having witnessed the entire tantrum. Damien, that's enough, she said, her voice firm. He was just doing his job. Damien laughed, a short, ugly sound. And you're his little protector now, are you, Reed? Is this your new charity case? Be careful, poverty might be contagious. He gave Finn a final, contemptuous shove, knocking the polish bottle from his hand. It clattered across the marble, leaving a milky trail. Without another word, Damien stormed off toward the elevators. Finn knelt to clean up the mess, his shoulders slumped. But when he looked up, he saw Clara standing there, her face a mask of fury and concern. She knelt beside him, grabbing a cloth from his cart. Don't listen to him, she whispered, her voice fierce. He's a miserable bully. Finn met her gaze, and for the first time, he let her see past the janitor's facade. He let her see the flicker of a different man in his eyes, a man of immense control, of discipline forged in crucibles she couldn't imagine. It's okay, he said, his voice steady. Men like him. They always get what they deserve in the end. The words hung in the air, filled with a certainty that was both chilling and deeply reassuring. The bond between them deepened. Clara started leaving a hot coffee for him on her desk each night, a silent gesture of solidarity. Finn would sometimes leave a small, perfectly folded origami animal for her in return, a swan, a fox, a dragon. Rosie, who had only seen Clara from a distance or in brief encounters when Finn brought her to the office for an hour, began drawing pictures of the three of them. In her crayon-scrawled world, they were a family. She started calling Clara the nice lady, and then, one day, in a quiet whisper to her dad, Mommy Clara, Finn's heart ached at the innocent hope in his daughter's eyes. He cared for Clara more than he wanted to admit, but his past was a locked cage, and letting her in could put her in danger. The very danger he had given up everything to escape. The crisis came on a Friday. It was an impromptu family day at the office, a PR stunt organized by Sterling Corporation. Finn, of course, wasn't invited. But the daycare had closed early due to a plumbing issue, and he had no choice but to bring Rosie with him for the last hour of his shift, hoping she could sit quietly and draw in a vacant office. He settled her in an empty conference room with her coloring books, telling her to be as quiet as a mouse. Meanwhile, Damien Sterling's world was imploding. A massive acquisition he had personally championed was collapsing due to his own negligence and fraud. His uncle, the CEO, had given him an ultimatum: fix it by the end of the day or he was out of the company and the family. Panicked and enraged, Damien cornered Clara in his glass-walled office, seeing her as a scapegoat. This is your fault, he roared, slamming the door shut and locking it. Your projections were wrong. You sabotaged me. Clara stood her ground. My projections were accurate, Damien. You're the one who ignored the risk assessments and falsified the due diligence reports. I have the emails to prove it. Damien's face went pale, then purple with fury. He advanced on her, backing her against the large window that overlooked the city. You'll give me those emails, he hissed, grabbing her arm. You'll write a full retraction and take the blame for this, or I'll make sure you never work in this city again. His grip tightened, his face contorted in a mask of desperation and menace. At that moment, Rosie, needing to use the restroom, tiptoed out of the conference room. She saw the scene unfolding in Damien's office, the angry man grabbing the nice lady who looked so scared. In her 6-year-old mind, the lines were simple and terrifying. The monster was hurting the princess. Tears welled in her eyes. She turned and ran, her little legs pumping as fast as they could, down the long, silent hallway toward the sound of her father's cleaning cart. She found him wiping down the elevator doors, his back to her. "Daddy," she sobbed, crashing into his legs and clinging to him. "Daddy, that mean man. He's hurting Mommy." "Clara. They're gonna hurt Mommy." Finn froze. The world narrowed to his daughter's terrified words. "They're gonna hurt Mommy." The phrase echoed in the deepest, most wounded part of his soul. It was a nightmare he had already lived once. He would not live it again. He knelt, turning Rosie to face him. The weary, gentle janitor was gone. In his place stood someone else entirely. His eyes, usually soft and tired, were now chips of ice, cold and lethally focused. His posture straightened, every ounce of subservience shed like a skin, revealing a frame of coiled steel. "Where, Rosie?" he asked, his voice a low, calm vibration that seemed to make the air hum. "Show me." She pointed a trembling finger down the hall toward Damien's office. Finn scooped her into one arm, holding her tight against his chest. "Close your eyes, sweetie. It's going to be okay now." He walked toward the office, his steps measured and silent. He didn't run. He didn't need to. He was a force of nature, a storm that had finally been unleashed. He reached the glass door and saw Damien still holding Clara, who was struggling against his grip. Damien looked up and saw Finn, and he laughed. "What are you going to do, janitor? Mop me into submission?" Finn ignored him. He shifted Rosie slightly in his arms and pulled a sleek, black, heavily encrypted satellite phone from his pocket, an object that looked utterly alien in the hands of a janitor. He pressed a single button. The phone didn't ring. It connected instantly. He spoke one sentence, his voice devoid of all emotion. "Initiate Protocol 0. Sterling Tower, 44th floor. Authorization Croft, Echo 9er." He ended the connection. For a second, nothing happened. Damien smirked, thinking it was a pathetic bluff. Then, the lights in the entire office flickered and died, plunging them into the eerie twilight of the emergency backup system. A series of sharp clicks echoed through the hall as every electronic lock on the floor disengaged. The magnetic lock on Damien's door buzzed and swung open. Finn stepped inside, Rosie still held securely in his arms. He didn't raise his voice. He didn't need to. The sheer weight of his presence filled the room, sucking the air from Damien's lungs. "Let her go," Finn said. It wasn't a request. It was a statement of fact, an alteration of reality. Damien, unnerved but still arrogant, released Clara. "Who the hell are you?" he stammered. "I'm the man who owns the holding company that owns the bank that holds the debt for this entire building," Finn said calmly, as if reciting the weather. "I'm the man whose family trust has a 60% controlling interest in your uncle's parent corporation. I'm the man who has been watching you embezzle funds, falsify reports, and harass employees for the last 6 months." He gently set Rosie down behind him, shielding her. "But more importantly," he continued, taking a step forward, his eyes locking onto Damien's, "I'm the father of the little girl you just terrified. And you put your hands on the woman she has decided is her mother." As he spoke, silent figures began to appear at the doorway. Men in dark, perfectly tailored suits with earpieces, their movements fluid and professional. They were not building security. They were specters, and they answered to Finn. Damien stared, his face a mask of disbelief and horror. "Croft. That's not your name, is it?" Finn gave a slight, cold smile. He stated his real name, a name synonymous with old-world power and untouchable wealth, a name that made politicians tremble and markets shift. Damien Sterling's legs gave out from under him, and he sank to the floor, speechless. "You're finished here," Finn said. "You'll be prosecuted for fraud, for assault, for everything. My people will be in touch with your uncle. See to him," he ordered the men at the door. 2 of them stepped forward and lifted Damien to his feet as if he weighed nothing. They escorted the whimpering, broken men away. The office was silent again, save for the hum of the emergency lights. Clara stared at Finn, her mind struggling to reconcile the men who scrubbed floors with the titan who had just dismantled a man's life with a single phone call. He was the same, yet entirely different. He turned to her, and the terrifying authority in his eyes melted away, replaced by the gentle concern she knew so well. "Are you okay?" he asked, his voice soft again. She could only nod, words failing her. He then knelt and opened his arms for Rosie, who ran into his embrace. "See? I told you, sweetie. Daddy made the monster go away." He held her close, his love for her a palpable force field. Later, after his team had secured the building and reset the power, Finn explained everything to Clara in the quiet of her office. He told her about his former life in a world of shadows and high stakes, a life he shared with his wife. When she was killed by their enemies, he had vanished, creating the identity of Finian Croft, a nobody, to protect the only thing he had left, Rosie. He had chosen a life of poverty and invisibility over a life of power and danger. "I never wanted to be that man again," he said, his voice laced with pain. "But he hurt you. And he scared my daughter. He left me no choice." Clara looked at him, at the devoted father and the hidden warrior, and saw not 2 different men, but one whole, extraordinary person. She reached out and took his hand. "You're a good man, Finian Croft," she said, using the name she knew him by, the name of the men she had come to care for. "No matter what your name is, or what you own." A few months later, the sun streamed into the backyard of a comfortable, unpretentious house. Laughter filled the air. Finn, dressed in jeans and a simple t-shirt, was pushing Rosie on a swing he had built himself. He was no longer a janitor, but he hadn't moved into a penthouse either. He had installed a new, ethical board at Sterling Corp, with Clara as its new CEO, and had then stepped back, content to manage his vast affairs from a quiet home office. He had the power to rule the world, but he had chosen a much smaller, infinitely more precious kingdom. Clara came out of the house carrying a tray of lemonade, a radiant smile on her face. She leaned down and kissed him, a gesture of easy, established love. Rosie giggled from the swing. "Higher, Daddy." "Mommy Clara, watch." Finn looked from his joyful daughter to the incredible woman by his side, and a profound sense of peace settled over him. He had faced down monsters of all kinds, but his greatest victory was this: a quiet life, a safe home, a family reborn from the ashes of grief. Have you ever underestimated someone, only to discover a universe of strength hidden just beneath the surface? How many everyday heroes walk among us, their true power concealed, waiting for the right moment to change the world for someone they love? Think about the single parents, the quiet workers, the unseen helpers in your own life, and share a story of their hidden strength below.